Hello, everybody. Hello. It's so nice to see all of you. Thank you for coming. I'm particularly inspired to see who I assume are young entrepreneurs. A quick scan here shows the interest that we are generating among young people, and that's exactly the purpose. Our topic today is disrupting business as usual. And there is nobody that disrupts business like young people. And so I'm very happy that you are here. The first thing would be to introduce the panelists, but I will just introduce them briefly. And here is the reason why. This lady is sitting in a minister's place. I don't know whether that is any indication about what this young lady is going to become. Her name is Mary. I will let her in a few minutes give her statement. And then I have Sonia, who is also a formidable lady. You'll hear about what she has to say. And then Francois, he will also introduce himself. The second thing that I'm very happy about is what a balanced panel that I have. Okay, technology is changing industries, with digital strategies becoming the make or break of organizations. And we are meant to discuss ways for integrating and capitalizing the potential of digital technologies to transform business as usual. Now, I'll start from my immediate right and ask Mary to quickly tell us who she is and make a very brief statement. For housekeeping, I'm going to run this panel on time. I know we have delayed, so instead of 90 minutes, we're going to do 60 minutes. Get your questions ready. I know you know the subject, so as soon as we are ready to move to you, we go. Okay, Mary.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mary Mwangi. I am with a company known as Data Integrated Limited. We are based in Kenya. What we do usually, we work with mobile payments. We create a mobile platform that combines the types of payments that we find in this region, meaning mobile money, credit cards, cash, and NFC. We combine everything into one device and create a backend for small and medium businesses to automate their systems.
Excellent. You're in good hands. Sonia.
Okay, my name is Sonia Jorge. I'm the Executive Director of the Alliance for Affordable Internet. We are hosted at the Web Foundation. And the Alliance for Affordable Internet, A4AI as we call ourselves, we are a coalition of public, private, and civil society organizations that have come together to work on policy and regulatory reform in developing countries. And the reason why we do that is because we see that policy and regulation are not only a very important promoter for development, for innovation, for transformation in Africa and other developing regions, but it's very important to have the right frameworks in place to ensure that the right conditions are there for businesses such as Mary's and such as Francois and others to be able to flourish and really bring the benefits to transform Africa that we are all here talking about. And so as an international coalition working on these issues, we also welcome all of you to join us in the countries in Africa that we are already working in, Nigeria, Ghana, and Mozambique, making sure that real change is able to transform the current frameworks, but most importantly, as I said earlier, able to promote the kind of environment where innovation is possible, where experimentation is welcome, and that innovation, there's no barriers to innovation, so that we can move forward to the reality of Internet for all that we are aiming for.
Francois.
Thank you very much. Good morning. First of all, I would like to thank you in advance if you could send some tweets to your friends and tell them to join us, because it's going to be an amazing session. My name is Francois Dugue, and the company I work for, we are guilty of disrupting a lot of things in the telecom sector. Back in 2007, we started to provide tools to government to make sure that they have the technical capability to govern, monitor the telecom sector, and to protect the revenues that most African governments used to pull out of their old public-owned telecom companies. After privatization, we know that the telecom sector has flourished thanks to privatization. At the same time, governments are challenged to monitor that very complex environment. And in 2009, 2010, we introduced at the International Telecommunication Union, at the Study Group 3, the concept of bringing the OTT players that are completely outside of any fiscal jurisdiction to register in the African countries so that they can create jobs, pay taxes, and help Africa move faster to the change that we cannot be stopped. So basically, we have our headquarters in South Africa. We have our development staff in Spain, and we have a presence in Ghana, Congo, Guinea, Togo, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal. I don't know if I miss anyone. And we also had an office in Central African Republic, Gabon. We work closely with the Ministry of Telecommunications at policy level and with the telecom regulator and tax authorities to make sure that the telecom sector remains fiscal compliant and also help the economy to grow. So today we are pleased to be part of this panel. We're going to discuss things that you all know in your current life, and telecommunication is being driven by end users. Government and service providers just have to follow quality of service, data protection, security, vulnerability of the network, taxation. All those issues are disruptive and forcing us to go out of our comfort zones, whether we are operators, providers, or government. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I wanted to stop him, but then it was so interesting I couldn't.
Thank you.
And I'm Andrew Rugege. I'm the ITU Regional Director for Africa, and I'm also the representative to the UNECA, Economic Commission for Africa, and the African Union. I am based in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. The organization, you all heard about ITU. Both the Secretary General was in the opening session, you heard from him. But let me say that the ITU is primarily responsible for three things. We are responsible for everything radio, including being the central registry for any satellites and their orbits that go in space. We are responsible for issuing your countries with spectrum, a hot issue these days. And we are responsible for issuing countries with their national telephone codes, including 250 for Rwanda. We are also responsible for making standards for telecommunication and ICT equipment and services. And we just made an announcement about standards that have been issued for advanced voice. So look out for that. In addition to that, we are on the forefront of creating standards for smart grids, smart water management, Internet of Things. Yeah, we are in the middle of it. We are also responsible for providing technical assistance to countries in areas of creating regulatory environments, legal frameworks in which you operate, in which the ICT industry operates, and also assisting countries in building their infrastructure for ICTs and telecommunications. But enough about me. It's all about these guys. I think we are privileged to have people with this range of experience in the pertinent subject. But I just couldn't help but say, disrupting business as usual. When I was growing up, the word disrupting was always used, at least towards me, as in a negative connotation, with a negative connotation. And trust me, that was not because I was disrupting in class. Well, maybe a little bit. But in the current context, disruptive technologies and disruptive innovations are sometimes contestable, depending on which side of the coin, whether you are being interrupted or whether you are interrupting. The reaction to that, especially towards policymakers and towards regulators, is certainly a contest. So, I would like to ask my panelists here, would you agree that if there is to be innovation, disruption of business as usual is inevitable? And if so, if it is inevitable, what must we do to embrace it? So, again, I will start with the lady on my right to give your views. Is innovation necessary? We know it is, that's not contestable, but is disruption inevitable? And what must we do?
I think when we say disruption, it can be in a way that if you're prepared for it, or does it take you by surprise? For some companies, let's take like the mobile money transactions that came. When you look at Kenya, we had the M-Pesa coming in and we had the banks. So when M-Pesa came, it disrupted the banks' business as usual. For them, it was, do they adapt and how fast do they adapt to it? At first, they thought it was something that's gonna pass. So to them, it became a disruption until they realized it was inevitable. So they had to adjust and join in, and now they are trying to integrate with mobile money as part of their daily business. So that is a type of disruption that I would say has helped, because it has brought a lot of people into the mobile banking, and you could say unbanked are kind of being able to bank using mobile banking. We have the loans coming in, but they can actually get loans from their phones. And so the banks really do have to compete with a disruptive technology in that sense. So, yeah, I would say that.
So you're saying if we are prepared, what we need to do is be prepared.
Be prepared for
Look
disruption.
ahead.
Yes.
I agree with that. Sonia?
Well, I think, not to disclose my age, I would say if you all think about the mobile industry in itself was a disruptive technology when it came. I remember working in the field of policy and people thinking, what are these cell phones? We already have lines. We have fixed lines, there's telephones. Why do we need it? And a lot of businesses were very scared about mobile technology. Of course, we know that all businesses that feel scared about it also adapt, as Mary was saying, and before we know, also embrace and welcome innovation. And so I agree with you, Andrew. It's very important to not only embrace, to be open to it, and it's really innovation that allows us to change, to really push markets in new directions. With the dramatic growth of the mobile industry, and also especially connectivity and access to the internet and the web in general, not only has been able to disrupt a lot of the ways in which people thought of having access to information, the way businesses conducted businesses and how they used technology as part of their businesses, but most importantly, the way it came to disrupt is that many new businesses are now possible and can flourish in a completely new environment, an environment that many have not been quite prepared to adapt to. And so the disruption in this case not only is extremely positive, it's extremely possible because from a user's perspective, it's bringing about many new opportunities and possibilities that otherwise wouldn't be there. And so what we also as A4AI believe is that for businesses to be able to do that, new startups, new ideas, current businesses being able to rethink themselves, you need to have an environment that helps that promotes the ability of all kinds of businesses, from micro, small, medium, to the very large tech companies and mobile operators, to be able to not only embrace innovation, understand that innovation, even when it seems to be a threat in the early stages, it is not necessarily a threat. It can actually be a promoter of business, of growth. And we need to have an environment that supports that kind of possibility. And so having policy frameworks in place, not just in Africa, but around the world, that are welcoming of innovation, that are welcoming experimentation, and that make sure that these kind of innovations are not set aside because of potential threats, but instead are given the opportunity to show and to prove themselves that they will be good options for users, good options for businesses, good options for any kind of service provider. It's very important. So the kinds of things that you were talking about, Mary, that were possible in Kenya were not only possible because they were a very strong innovative force behind a lot of the M-Pesa innovations, but there was also very important leadership in your country that allowed for those possibilities to be a reality and to be experimented. And so it's very important that many businesses in Africa are given that chance to experiment, are given the chance to also be trusted with the innovation and the new ideas that are possible for this continent. And so it's important, but it's the kind of disruption that is positive that is very important to nurture. So it's not, again, as when we were children, you disrupting, you being really difficult. No.
Not like me, eh?
Please come and disrupt, because by disrupting, you're making us rethink how we are approaching new ideas, how we are approaching new ways to serve, to provide services, to really innovate in service delivery in many ways.
Okay.
Francois, please.
I would say the biggest disruption problem that we have is our ability to manage change, ability to react to the fact that this evolution to digital society, digital economy, digital age is not in the hands of the providers, in the hands of governments. It is in the hands of us, the population and the end users. There are so many content application services that are created by us, and so many things that we love to do right now with technology, they create problems, and it's a moving field. It's the lawmakers cannot keep up with what's going on. I'm going to be giving you a few examples. Nobody imposed with a law that we upload our wives' pictures or children's pictures on the internet, to Facebook, wedding, birth anniversaries and everything. It causes a problem of data privacy. It causes a problem of your personal data, your personal integrity, in credit card transaction over the internet. So basically, managing change in this constantly moving digital society is the biggest disruption that we are facing in our industry, where we have to advise lawmakers, governments on what to do, not to be portrayed as blocking technology, blocking Skype, because Skype is denting revenues from the telecom operators that are paying taxes to the government. government make taxes to build roads for education and everything, healthcare. Twitter is basically, Twitter or WhatsApp, basically killing SMS business of the network operators. So how do we as advisors, policymakers, to tell them, you don't have to worry, you need to encourage this kind of change, because at the end of the tunnel, 50 young Rwandans are going to be creating new companies. They're going to be competing with the OTTs. So basically, at the end of the day, the biggest disruption to me is data privacy. I would put it as number one. Security of state and military government data centers and information. But for the rest, I think that we are doing pretty well on imposing the type of internet service that we love. Uber, I cannot wait to see in Spain, where I spent 1/3 of my time, the taxi drivers are opposing Uber, and it's all over the place. I see even the European Union opposing Google for some practices that they believe to be disruptive. I cannot wait to see how this is going to end. But my biggest really worry again and again is data privacy and the hackers, because they can be very harmful to people and to governments. Thank you.
Thank you, but I'm going to try and drill down on that a little bit, particularly in relation to Africa, the environment that we are most concerned with. The president of this country is always telling us, and people in the industry, that we are not disruptive enough. Africa is not feeling yet the impact of disruptive technologies. And I want to drill down a little bit. WhatsApp is probably the most disruptive innovation for operators, for the traditional telecom businesses. But that is the same as mobile payments are to the financial sector, the same as telemedicine is to traditional medicine. And yet, whereas it's shaking up the US, it's shaking up Europe, we are still in Africa not really shaken up. Not everybody is feeling it. And I want us to go out of this session convinced of what we need to do to meet President Kagame's expectations and all the other presidents that you see behind this Transform Africa. These guys are serious. They want us to work. So I want us to discuss what is it that we need to do. Yes, I'm on WhatsApp. I know some other people who are on WhatsApp. Zimbabwe, we are developing a project on telemedicine. What do we need to do to shake up Africa? And I want you to address not only the technologies, not only the services, I also want you to address the regulatory environment, the legal framework, and probably what these young people are most interested in, entrepreneurship. So,
I would take that one if you...
I think ladies first.
Yeah, we'll let you go first.
Okay, we'll change a little bit.
Okay. I would be very brief. And being very close to governments and to the regulatory authorities, effectively, the telecom sector has been increasing in terms of coverage, in terms of penetration ratio, and data is exploding, but the ARPU, the average revenue per user of the telecom operator, is declining. And there is a bright future in the horizon for the telecom operators, but the sustainability of those networks, as the applications are more demanding for bandwidth, for 3G, 4G, more coverage, more capacity, more simultaneous connection. I think it is fair to question what is the contribution that those who can claim, let's say, 3 million, I would say Facebook would say, well, I own 3 million, one done, subscribers. They come at my website twice a day. I have those statistics. I think that it is fair for the telecom regulators to also have those statistics. And one day to sit in the room with Facebook and say, wait a minute, you want to do your own currency, you want to sell clothes, you are associated with Hotmail, you're doing Amazon, and you're making PayPal payments. Why don't you come here in Africa and pay your fair share? Does that make sense? So basically, that's the kind of proposition we at my company we made at ITU back in 2012 to monitor the amount of traffic that these out-of-jurisdiction providers are pulling out of Rwanda, Kenya, Tanzania. We can send them a bill. We know their address and their email address. It is fair that they pay a bill to Africa for using our market, because the electronic marketplace has a value. When Facebook announced on an IPO for, what was it, 40 billion? So what part of it do we contribute to that value, because our subscribers are logging in? So,
May I?
Thank you very much. I think this is going to be an interesting discussion. That the owners of the disruptive businesses should give back to the continent. Wow, I'm hoping somebody will respond to that. But yes, Sonia, let's.
So your question was also in terms of what can be done to really support flourishing of businesses, not just disruptive businesses, but businesses in general, so that more innovation and really more options for access. And especially, as you know, we are from the Alliance, it's not just access, it's really about affordable access to not only users, but businesses, private users, the individuals as all of us, but also businesses to be able to conduct business and be those kinds of disruptors, but also innovators in Africa. And so what I wanted to mention is that I think we also need to ground the dialogue in the realities that we have in Africa, the realities that we have in the many countries here in this continent. And it's a reality where, first and foremost, as you said, your president is very right. For the most part, most countries in the region have not been able to take full advantage of all the benefits and opportunities of the internet and of the web in general. In fact, one of the things that we do to help and support and really learn for the work that we do is we conduct a lot of research, robust research, to understand how is it that things are taking place? What are the trends? Where can we look at the windows of opportunity to really make a change in terms of policy and regulatory frameworks? And one of the things that was very clear from our research with my colleagues at the Web Foundation through the Web Index is that businesses in Africa and in many other developing countries are very far, as of now, very far from being able to take full advantage of the potential of access to the internet. So what do we do to change that and to really create an environment just as the one that you are envisioning, Andrew, where disruption becomes a positive factor in the market, a positive factor to create more demand, to bring more users to the market, to grow the sector in Africa so that everyone can share that benefit. And maybe Francois will not like some of my suggestions, but one that is very important, especially when it comes to small, medium-sized businesses, is tax incentives. Making sure that businesses in Africa are not being taxed extremely high or with huge burdens that in essence is impeding them from not only innovating, but really from establishing themselves in the marketplace. So tax incentives, not just to startups, to seed funding, and many other kinds of investments in Africa is very important to not only attract the investment, but to keep that investment really fluid and healthy to continue to support those kinds of activities. The other thing that is very important that we all know is that, and here Rwanda is an exception. There's a lot of incredible work being done in this country to support a lot of capacity development, a lot of education in the general ICT and STEM fields, and that's really important, but we need to have a lot more. There's no reason why in Africa, a small business needs to require outside support for whatever task it might be when they need to have that capacity in their countries, in the continent. So two very concrete possibilities that can support not only innovation, but the kind of positive disruption that is important for markets to grow and to bring new opportunities are precisely those. Better tax incentives for investment, and also much more investment in capacity building so that you have many more opportunities and support a system, a national system of innovation. I think what Kenya has done through the innovation hubs, and Rwanda is also embarking on that, and many countries are doing that, is extremely positive and important. But those kinds of initiatives need to grow, need to be nurtured, need to be supported, and because our industry and the internet is such a platform for development opportunities across the different industries, across the different sectors in a country, is important that we support that kind of investment and that kind of capacity building.
Thank you very much.
I can add to that when you talk about tax incentives. What we are realizing with African governments is that they're giving tax incentives, but not to the local companies. They are giving tax incentives to outside companies that they want to attract coming in. And so the small and medium-sized enterprises that are within the country are being left out. They're being made to pay the taxes, which are usually higher. And then the other thing that actually needs to be, there needs to be a sensitization of the culture with every country or every community that you go into in terms of how to use technology also. Some people feel that businesses and their income and everything that they do regarding money is private. And so they feel that if they do automate their systems and that information is out there, then they feel that they lose some of that privacy in terms of that. So it becomes a sensitive topic when you do want people to adapt into a technology that they have to give out their information out there. They have to use that information and they feel that, oh, I'm sharing this information with people, but they don't see the benefit of them sharing it. The other thing I would like to add is we want to have 4G and 3G networks, but if you look at the community, usually in Africa, most of them are on 2G. Companies want to add and adapt the latest technology, but to reach the people, your clients and your customers, most of them are using 2G phones. And so I think if you're going to add technology and applications, maybe we add applications to the 2G like a WhatsApp for advertisement. And I think in the future, it would be more targeted towards the clients that, you know, the majority of the people. Before we get to the 4G, maybe we need to add or create technology that can be quickly adapted in that level. And I think that's why you look at mobile money, like we do it in Africa, it's something SSD-based. USSD-based. But if you look at what they are calling mobile money in the developed countries, it's an application that you're downloading to your phone. You have the Apple Pay, and it's all totally different. And so we have to adapt the technology depending on what our realities are within the continent.
Andrew, just a clarification. I agree with you that taxation has to be, first of all, across the board. The issues, they have to be equal. But it's what I was mentioning was having tax breaks and tax incentives for the kind of seed funding that innovators need. That small, you know, that startups, that new innovators need to invest. No, the taxation is also an important issue also to the larger, you know, investors. And we certainly also support the fact that taxation has to be more fair and certainly in many cases reduced, not because we don't believe that governments need revenue. In fact, they do, and taxation should not be completely eliminated, not at all. But there are ways when you are in a specific place in the development continuum, as I like to say, that incentives are very important to increase investment. And so you don't completely, it's not about eliminating taxation, but it's reducing and creating incentives through the fiscal system that can motivate further innovation, that can motivate and incentivize further investment. And that's really important. That has been important in Kenya, for example, when it came to smartphones and other computing devices, that when taxes were reduced, there was a huge uptake, right, and therefore allowed for many more opportunities to take place. That is now taking place. We were fortunate to be part of a work that took place in Ghana that we hope that will continue to move forward to make the same kind of experience take place there and in other countries. But that is extremely important to really promote and support, especially users, to be able to come into the market. Because the reality in Africa is that right now, even with the best statistics that the ITU shares with us and what we do in our research, there's only about 20% penetration of mobile broadband in the continent. But if you actually look at most of the countries in sub-Saharan Africa, it's far below that. And when you look at affordability, which if those who want to be connected and innovate are not able to get online and be able to benefit from the kinds of opportunities that we are envisioning, and if the cost of doing that is so prohibitive, then we are not really making anyone a good service. We need to change the picture so that overall, in general, the entire cost structure for the industry needs to change. It needs to be reduced so that ultimately everything becomes more affordable, not just to the end user, but to businesses including. I was mentioning to Andrew earlier, and I'm sure he's going to ask questions about that, but small and medium enterprises in Africa, and including micro businesses, which make up the majority of the businesses that are really developing the continent, are the ones who have the least ability to enter and to benefit from ICTs, because they are the ones who have the least amount of resources. So if we don't make connectivity and access and the possibility of adoption not only easier, more affordable, and also more innovative, they're going to be left out. And up until now, the research shows is that for the most part, those businesses are being left out. It's almost as if not only we have a digital divide in the larger consumer market, but you also have a digital divide in the business market. One where, for the most part, micro, small businesses, which are really at the core of development in this continent, are not able to engage. Okay. And so that's the kind of thing that needs to change.
Andrew, I want to make an observation to just lay this out, just said. In the area of diagnostic, we all agree. Okay. In the area of what should be done, what are the big light bulb ideas that we can put forward to get more digital inclusion and everything, I believe that the economy is the main driver for everything, and then you have the military application used to be first, but now on second. Exchange, promote exchange between African countries, promote commerce, e-commerce, or own Amazon cloud if you want, and promote, and I would say, lower tax barrier between regions, like the East African community is doing a very good job at creating one market. Promoting a single currency by region, the ministers and the central bank of those countries that are not sharing one central bank have to do better. I see no reason, for instance, why we would have Rwanda francs, Tanzanian shilling, Ugandan shilling. It's time that we move to one currency. This is going to fuel a lot of exchange, larger market, less headache. And at the end of the day, I refute also the idea that Africa is behind in terms of what could we do, what can we do with the internet. And when I see Apple Pay, I laugh. It comes from us, from East Africa, dominantly a market of mobile money, and now they're just learning how to use it in the US. And I also believe that once we have more exchange between businesses, farmers, tax incentive to ship something from Nigeria to Ghana, from Kenya to Uganda, you're gonna see people, just like they're uploading their pictures on Facebook, getting on, and MTN, Orange, Airtel will drop their prices. I was talking on the airplane with the CEO of Liquid Telecom. He told me, Francois, I am ready to sell 1 megabit for $25. I can't get that in many countries in Europe or even in America in some towns. So basically, Andrew, I believe that tax incentive, e-commerce between countries, and all those factors will help a lot. And also this Twitter problem that you mentioned, we need to bring them to register themselves, get a license, and pay their taxes every year.
Thank you. I knew that was going to come up. Basically, there are a few things that have come up that seem to be hurdles that we need to jump. I think there is a general consensus that taxation is an issue. Do we need to educate our tax administration? Is there anything that we can do that is disruptive but not disadvantageous to governments that need that revenue in order to be able to make progress in other areas? I'm sure there are people in the audience that would be able, that are from administrations and may be able to engage with us. But the other thing that was said is about capacity building. Maybe that is one of the reasons why Africa is not that shaken up, because you may have as much capacity, although it's still expensive, but even what there is it being used to the maximum? Another issue that I had was we do need the tools. We have so many young people creating mobile applications that are very disruptive, but how many people in our villages are using them? Do we have the right equipment to do that? So I want to be fair to our participants and who are in the audience, to give them an opportunity to react to some of the things that have been said, and then we'll come back to the panel. We are open for your comments. Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Could you say who you are?
My name is Singh, and I'm from a company called Comlabs in India.
Okay.
A company called Comlabs in India. The microphone's on now. Okay. I had a question. When one of the big challenges that I see for Africa, having been around a little bit, is that access, like you very rightly said, whether it's to businesses, small businesses, SMEs, is not there. And in many places, the connectivity is still at the 2G range. So how can you, what do you propose as a disruptive means for being able to provide internet? Facebook and Google are both talking about drones and putting up balloons and providing internet. So is there anything that's being done by anybody in Africa to be able to provide internet?
Okay, I think that's a very appropriate question. But let's take a couple other comments and then we'll allow. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Ibrahim Diko. I run a fiber optic network in Nigeria. I have the largest fiber optic network in Abuja. I think the biggest challenge facing in the whole ecosystem is the absolute lack of connectivity. We know the challenges that we face in trying to deploy fiber all across the country. We find that government tends to tax investment rather than revenues, right? The the focus is always on the money up front rather than tax and revenues. We find that there's a lack of consistency, right, of policy, right, which doesn't give you the reliability for long-term investment. Therefore, funds also are unable to come, right, to match the business case. And I think this, to me, is the greatest threat to a lot of the things that, you know, we all aspire to achieve. There are very few centers available to the young people to even explore ideas that are potentially disruptive, right? Because of the basic lack of connectivity. It's too expensive, and it's very, very difficult. And I think for me, the real disruption I'm looking for is how to ensure that we're able to achieve connectivity, right, across board. And I like to have any thoughts that the panel has in this regard.
There's one more.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Hi, Ralph Corey, Intel Corporation, Worldwide Directive, Government World Ahead. One comment on the tax issue. We've seen study after study. Well, first of all, I think as a general rule, countries need to look at the tax policy on ITC and make sure it's not overly burdened compared to any of the other sectors. So as a general rule, it should not be taxed more relative than any other sector within the country, right? Especially if it's such an important entity for that country's social economic benefits. But we've seen country after country studies where VAT was reduced on devices, and in fact, Colombia, Costa Rica, India, Turkey, Kenya, where it has promoted it has helped in the affordability category, right? And in fact, in this study in Colombia, it was actually a revenue neutral to revenue positive effect for the finance minister. So even though they didn't pay the VAT on devices, the taxes that was accrued on all the peripheral purchases that were made to support those devices, whether it be in software or other hardware or other things, supported the revenues that were lost against the VAT. So I think what really needs to happen here is that it just needs to be, I guess, communicated and provided some of these studies to a lot of these countries to say that, in fact, when you reduce VAT off of devices, it becomes a revenue neutral for your tax revenue purposes, and therefore you're accelerating the demand, but yet not losing revenue, right? Even if it's a break even, they're still ahead of the game. Okay. Second, I think there was a comment about supplying disruptive technologies and infrastructure, whether it be balloon-based or helium-based or some other kind of technology. And I think the disruptions need to come from a business model because scale is very important for success here and not a kind of one-off kinds of approaches. So I think the telecommunication industry can provide the scale that's necessary, but a more innovative business model is needed to provide the connectivity to the next couple of billion people, right? So I think that's really where the focus should be, not so much on technology because the technology is here. It's really more about the business model, and that's where the innovation should be. Because at the end of the day, there has to be a business model in it for it to be sustainable and successful. Thank you.
Good. Let me take the lady here.
My name is Alice Higiro, Market Intelligence Officer at Africa Less
Sorry, there is some echo that I don't know where it's coming from.
She's close to the microphone.
Okay.
Can I go ahead? Sure. All right. So mine is more like a comment or just something on to other. Africa OLE services. Yes. So looking at the whole sub-Saharan Africa region, just to agree with Maria, sorry. She said that we need to adapt to technologies according to our region, and I think if you look in this region as well, you find that the penetration rates are still very low. One of the reasons being that the population is not really educated. There is we can bring the innovation, we can bring the technologies, but then who is going to use it? I think the number of people or the population that is able to use these technologies or informed about it is still very low. So I think there needs to be more investment in the education area, and then that will have a ripple effect on the business, on the technologies, and on the users as well. Thank you.
Thank you. There was a gentleman here. Just when you are done, switch off your microphone, please.
Thank you. My name is Rocha. I'm a consultant. Used to be an ICT person in my past life, now in management consulting. I have a couple of general comments. The first one, I totally agree with the statement or the opinion of the President of Kagame about the disruption. We need them as yesterday because they bring efficiency. They are supposed to bring affordability and inclusion. In that regard, we welcome all the disruptive technology that we can invent, imagine. The second thing is it's about the balance of power or for some of this disrupting technology. Facebook or Google are a massive company. They have been having a powerful government that cannot even challenge them, and very difficult for our countries in Africa to challenge them. And if we try to put some regulation, like in France, recently they have banned Uber, the transport, yeah? In some countries, I think in South Africa, I'm not sure, but in some other country. If you try to do so in Africa, they will say that you are against business innovation, your environment is not okay, you are strangling the entrepreneur. But telecom companies do have a way of setting the losses. They can increase the costs for data usage per user, they recoup some of the losses. What I'm trying to say here, not to stay as a raw material country exporting versus a value-added material. Maybe the telecom or fiscal administration should look at the volume. As soon as a product or disruptive technology reaches a certain threshold, let's say, I will give you just an example for the sake of that discussion. If in a given country, telecoms find that Facebook has penetrated more than 10% of the customer base, the clientele, and that there is no tax implication, there should be a research from the tax administration to look at the issue. And if it reaches the threshold, all the local and regional administration to go and bargain with those to have a share or a cut on that thing. That's my contribution.
Thank you very much. Perhaps before I give the panelists an opportunity, I did promise that we would stop at 1:30. A couple of things that I'm privy to. All these issues that you are mentioning are, I think, on the radar for a number of administrations. And evidence to that is that I do know that there is an effort for African ministers of ICT and African ministers of finance to get together to address some of these issues, to get ICT on the agenda of the country's budget and administration. And therefore, I think that will get the countries thinking about whether the taxation regime is in line with what they should be doing, whether disruptive technologies should be encouraged or find some disruptive way to make up their revenues. I also know that in this region that they are calling Northern Corridor, there is something disruptive that has happened. The one area network, where roaming charges have been eliminated. I used to be an operator, and I know what kind of attractive revenues used to come from roaming. But I think what data, reliable data has proven in the countries of Rwanda, South Sudan, Kenya, and Uganda. The proof, documented proof, and they are monitoring the traffic, is that traffic has shot through the roof. Now, that is a disruptive technology that may not have been evident, but now the benefits are seen, and really administrations should be looking at that the same way that operators have looked at it. I'm also privy to information from Smart Africa Initiative, and I do know that in terms of addressing the issues of capacity building at that level, but the issues of digital literacy at the basic level, so we can get the common people to use the technology. There is an initiative, and I'm very glad that South Sudan is sitting in front of me. There is an initiative, a flagship initiative championed by South Sudan called Digital Literacy, which aims to get our people in Africa digitally literate from the grassroots. I'm also, I don't want to take too much time, but there will be the Smart Africa Scholarship Fund that will be operationalized before the end of this year. We have member countries of Smart Africa that have contributed funds, and you'll be hearing about that later. But let me give closing comments to our esteemed panelists. We do have 6 minutes, so I'll do 2 minutes each, then we'll release everybody for lunch. 2 minutes for you, Francois.
All right, thank you very much. I'm trying to minute, 2 minutes. So, managing change with timely and careful adoption of common technology to change our lives for the better, quick adoption of mobile technologies and crowdsourcing will make it cheaper and faster for the people, for we the people, to take governance in our own hands, to impose transparency, accountability, and impose our preferences to the marketplace and to the government. President Kagame has a quote, which is my most, the quote that I love the most. It says that information technology means no more excuses. Basically, being disrupted because we need to address network security, identity theft, interoperability, sustainability of the networks, personal data to be protected, the environment, and digital waste are not an excuse for us to embrace the digital age and to make things better for our people. Our new generation of kids are born digital. There will be no excuses. They're not going to take less than data centers to manage public services. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So there were a lot of very interesting questions from all of you in the audience, and I don't think we have time to answer all of them. So what I'll say is, there's one thing that countries can do that really puts together and brings all of the interest that many of your questions have. And that is to have really proper policy in places, ICT, especially broadband plans, that not only provide really clear guidance and a vision to the country of what they want to accomplish, but especially with very clear implementation plans that say, if we want to have this kind of access and use and adoption in our country, we need to invest, not just in infrastructure, so you need to invest in infrastructure with proper incentives for that to be there. You need to make sure that there is relevant content in the whole entire ecosystem of ICTs and the internet, so that the information is usable, is meaningful for people's lives. We need to make sure that that content is developed by local industries that need to be supported and flourish to be able to, for that local content in local languages that is relevant for people's livelihoods to be available. We also need to make sure that the capacity is there. And when I say capacity, it's not just capacity in terms of overall education, which is critical and by far the most important variable that determines how people are able or not to not only come online, but also to take advantage of the opportunities that being online and being connected bring. And this is important for everyone, but especially important for women, for rural populations, and for the poor, because those are the hardest hits, those are the most marginalized, the ones that are outside of the ecosystem right now. And to bring them into the ecosystem, that's the kind of thing that you need to do. And lastly, but never least, make sure that being able to connect, being able to adopt and use is affordable. If it's not affordable, we'll remain in the situation where a large majority of Africans are outside of this opportunity. And that we cannot afford to have, not now, not in 5 years from now, not in 20 years from now, especially in the context of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, in that we all, as a global community, have committed to. We really need to move fast. We need to move fast, invest, and come up with much more innovative ways to look at how we bring solutions so that people can have access, not just fictitious access, but real access that they can afford and benefit from. So I'll stop there, and I'll say just one thing, Andrew, if you don't mind. We actually put together a very beautiful thing that my team, who's fantastic and is here, put together a little brief. It's called Policies in Your Pocket, and it gives you examples of what countries are doing to be able to get there. So I urge you to come and get a few and get from the team, which I think will give you some good examples that hopefully you can replicate in your constituencies.
Excellent. We also have another takeaway. Mary.
Okay, I can only talk from an entrepreneur point of view and say that one of the ways I can see that it would be helpful to startups, IT companies in Africa would be if there's more collaboration between the IT hubs that we have, not just the ones that are being set up mostly in the cities, but if we could have some in the rural areas that understand the needs and the requirements of the people in the rural areas, and then there's a collaboration and help from the different governments, where someone in Southern Sudan is trying to solve, has a solution that probably can be used in Kenya, and we're trying to figure out how can we solve this problem. And so I think probably creating some kind of collaboration platform where technology is being passed through different countries in Africa, and that would help, I think, create some kind of disruption in the different regions. And that would give us the numbers and the help that different ICT companies are trying to create.
Excellent. Two things that are taking place. One, we talked about connectivity that is not reaching everywhere. Again, let me go back to the baby of Transform Africa, which is Smart Africa. As part of that initiative, heads of state have given instructions that any new public infrastructure must have broadband infrastructure on it. And I'm sure that will help. We have, as was said in the opening by both the IT Secretary General and the Prime Minister, we have the power to transform this continent. It's up to us, not up to Google, not up to Facebook. It's up to us to make sure that we create relevant, disruptive, usable solutions and technologies that respond to the challenges that we have in this continent. We have the brains to do it. I see, as I said, I keep talking about the people that I see in front of me. All this is brain power. What we see every day is these apps that are coming up, is the use of mobile technologies and the agility that these people have. We said in order to be, not to be disrupted with disruptive technologies and innovations is to be agile and to be anticipatory and to make sure that we have people at the grassroots level that can take advantage of the disruptive innovations, disruptive technologies, and make them positive. The same way the mobile phone, we now have probably more mobile subscriptions than we have citizens of this universe, over 7 billion of them. And so we need killer apps like that, and they are not going to come from anywhere. They are going to come from Africa. We are the next frontier. Please give a hand to my panel. I'm sure you'll agree they are wonderful. And another one to yourselves for being a wonderful audience. I thank you and bon appetit.
Chintwalidde ebbanga gwangu okusalawo byempiseemu bingi kano kenkulabye kulira matidde wesize omutima ogutwale kati sigezaako kugeza kyeŋŋamba mmanyi kabaani kakibeeki beweka